Good morning, everybody. And thank you very much for joining us. And when I'm looking at this room that is half full, I have two thoughts in mind. First of all, many of the people here didn't think that a handful of you would be here at this time of morning, so it's great. But the second thing is that this room is really a testament, if you look all the way to the back, to the big ambitions of the IAC. So I think we're halfway there, right, John? Of where we need to be. My name is Gidi Grinstein, and I am the founder and now the president of a group in Israel called Reut, spelled with an Aleph, Reish Aleph Vav Taf. We're a non-profit. We're dedicated to creating and scaling models and ideas that tackle some of the big challenges that face the state of Israel as a society and the Jewish people. A few years ago, in 2008, we started focusing on the growing challenge of Israel's relations with the Jewish world and with the Jewish world, and dealing with the growing rift between the two communities. And at the time, one of the things we saw is that the biggest blind spot in this relationship between Israel and the diaspora is the Israeli diaspora. We started calling it the Israeli diaspora. And we started researching it and looking at it, and we eventually zoomed on 5 areas in America where we thought that path-breaking, innovative work was taking place in Florida, New York, Toronto, the Bay Area, and in Los Angeles. And in Los Angeles, we had the privilege of meeting a group. Believe it or not, you could put all of them at the time in 2008 around 2 tables, right? Plus or minus. Shawn was there. It was called the ILC then, the Israeli Leadership Council. And what was so unique about this group compared to all other groups that we met in North America in 2008 was that this group had actually a vision to go national and to transform the entire Jewish Israeli community in North America. Believe it or not, it's happening in front of our eyes. It's astonishing, it's remarkable, and it's a huge story of vision, leadership, and execution. So fast forward, we've had great relationship with what is now the IAC, the Israeli American Council, and which comes to this morning where us, the Reut group, in a moment I'll introduce my colleague Klar, and myself, we're asked to host this panel that actually deals with one of the questions that I believe is the most important question for Israel and the Jewish people of our time, which is what does it mean to be the nation state of the Jewish people in the 21st century? Israel was envisioned to be the nation state of the Jewish people. It was declared as the nation state of the Jewish people in 1948, and now it is up to us, all of us collectively, to imagine and understand what this means. So today, this is the subject of this panel. We're going to deal with the topic. We're going to deal with this topic from the perspective of Israel now, and from the perspective of diaspora Jewry in the panel that will come later at 10 o'clock. Before I introduce all of these very distinguished panelists, we have a great panel this morning. I want to ask Shawn Evenhaim, the chair of the IAC,
Not the chair.
Immediate past chair of the IAC, right? I think I saw Adam coming in. The chair is there. Chair is there. Right. I asked Shawn to, Shawn will say a few words to kick us off. I want to say about Shawn, he's one of the most remarkable leaders of the Israeli community in America. He's been there from the start, even before I met Shawn in the context of ILC. This is an Israeli leader that understood the importance of philanthropy in Jewish educational institutions in Los Angeles, which was not so common at the time. And since then, he's emerging not far beyond the Israeli community, also to leadership roles in the Jewish world, with Birthright Israel, with Federation, and with other things. So I want to give you Shawn Evenhaim to kick us off, and then we'll start the day. Shawn, please.
Thank you. Good morning. It took me a year to convince Adam to be the chair, and you're making me the chair again. So first I want to thank Gidi because, like he mentioned from the beginning, we had so many discussions. I can't forget even the meeting we had at the conference room in my office that your whole team came.
Can you believe that the whole IAC could be set around the conference table?
Yes. And this topic that we're talking about today was a big issue for us from the beginning. It's a big issue for us today. We believe that we can help so much as a community because we understand both communities. Most of our community has lived in Israel for so many years, and they live in the United States for so many years. So we understand both sides, and we see our part, that our part really is huge in this whole context, and we are happy that you're here, and we'll dive into the discussion.
Yes, so, well, thank you. Inspired by Giuliani, as you can see, Shawn kept his comments long. But what we'll do now is, I want to just share with you how we're going to run this panel. We want to make it very interactive and very engaging for you, especially those of you that are still half asleep because of the early time of the day. We're going to start with a brief presentation by my colleague Klar of the Reut group. She's going to present a framework for our work here. Naama is an exceptional young Israeli leader who's involved in multiple areas of work beyond her work with us, beyond multiple areas of leadership. And over last year, she has led the team in Israel that has been looking at the emerging trends and the changing dynamics of the relations between Israel and the Jewish people. The title of this work is Israel as the Nation State of the Jewish People. What does it mean in 21st century? Which is also the title of the panel today. Naama is going to speak just for a few minutes to give us a frame, and then each of the panelists is going to give opening remarks. We're then going to go to all of you to ask your questions. We'll collect them. Everybody's going to be able to respond. We're going to do it 2-3 times, and I hope we're all going to have fun. Naama, please. Naama, קחי את זה. לא שומע אותך. אוקיי, בואי שבי פה. קדימה.
Okay, thank you, Gidi. Good morning, everyone. So in his speech last week, Prime Minister Netanyahu had said at the United Nations that the barrier to peace, the way he views it, is that the Palestinians wouldn't recognize Israel's right to exist as the nation state of the Jewish people. For Israelis, this phrase, Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people, might be seemed self-explanatory almost. And maybe it's so when you look at face-to-face with the Arab or Palestinians population. But what does the same phrase mean when you look at face-to-face with our Jewish sisters and brothers outside of Israel? For many years, the question of what does it mean to be the Jewish nation state had good answers. For instance, a state of refuge, or the only state where the Jewish religion is the dominant one. However, this question must be asked today again. What does it mean for Israel to be the nation state of the Jewish people at the 21st century, 2016? We at the Reut Institute believe that this question lies at the very core of the Zionist mission. Israel was established in order to secure the survival, prosperity, leadership, and unity of the entire Jewish people. So now, Israeli society must ask itself, what does it mean to be the Jewish nation state when it relates to Jewish communities in the world? What obligations and responsibilities comes with that role? What is Israel's responsibility on fixing the relationship between Israel and the diaspora? And what can Israel do today to strengthen Jewish communities in the world? How can it be more relevant for them, even for the younger generations? Some of those questions cannot be answered by more shlichim or more taglit. These questions, however, are not merely philosophical, but day-to-day questions Israeli society must grapple with. For instance, the Iran deal. Many American Jews felt frustrated by the expectations of Israel and the Israeli government, while many Israelis felt, to some extent, abandoned. The nationhood bill, which led in several rounds, but never invited diaspora Jewry to participate in the debate of what does it mean being the Jewish nation. The annulment of the conversions by highly esteemed American Rabbi Lockstein, including Ivanka Trump conversion. Never in the history of the Jewish people did one Jewish authority or religious authority have the ability to do such a thing. Even the fact that the women of the wall make it to the front page of the New York Times, but hardly understood within Israel as a Jewish issue. And lastly, even if you look at anti-Semitic riots in Europe during war times in Israel, which jeopardized Jewish communities outside of Israel. If you look at all those events through the prism of Israel as the Jewish nation state, it is clear that those issues touches the very core of what does it mean for Israel to be the Jewish nation state today, at the 21st century. This comes with hard questions and debates that has to take place within the Israeli society today, because if those questions will not be asked, we just might erode our ability to fulfill the original mission of the Jewish state, which is strengthening the Jewish people. Today we would like to ask our honorable panelists, what do they think it means for Israel to be the Jewish nation state at the 21st century?
Thank you very much. All right, as you can see, IAC believes in a very high level of service. About 4 minutes ago, some panelists here asked for coffee, and now there's coffee on the table. And this is my opportunity to actually say thank you and a shout out to Shai Nemesh over there. Shai? Really, we usually do it at the end, but he really worked tirelessly to make this happen with patience and dedication and an outstandingly generous spirit with the ability to engage with us substantively about this panel. So Shai, thank you very much. And Shai is one of multiple outstanding professionals that are part of the IAC staff. Really remarkable team. So now we're going to get...
Wait, the moral of the story is that Reut delivers.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm now going to use... I asked for the bios of everybody here, and I got some very, very long statements, some shorter. So I used my authority as a moderator to actually shorten it to what I believe are the key most important elements of the story of the people that sit on this panel, because you really are looking at a remarkable, remarkable panel. Any one of your panelists that is upset with me, we can settle that later. So first of all, I want to start with the far left. Professor Uriel Reichman. Professor Reichman is what?
The far left is always me.
Should have started the far left on the other side.
Yeah, the far left is.
The far left is on the right. Anyhow, thank you for the comment. Uri, sorry for insulting you. Jonathan Davis sitting here wants to shoot me. It's not on record. He's backing already. Okay, so Professor Uriel, metaphorically on this panel, Professor Uriel Reichman is the founder and president of IDC Herzliya. It is the first, yes, I hear, yes, you're right, first non-profit private college in Israel, one of Israel's leading academic institutions. It is today a truly international university with more than 1,600 of its 6,500 students coming from 84 nations. And this is no coincidence. It was central to the vision of Professor Reichman and the amazing team around him. Jonathan Davis is sitting here. So, Uri Reichman. I always say in Israel that Uri Reichman is one of the greatest institution builders of our time in Israel. And this is part of probably, his legacy will last for generations. Next to him, Richard Sandler, chairman of the Jewish Federation of North America, Executive Vice President and Trustee of the Milken Family Foundation, Chair of the Board of Trustees of the Jewish Federations of North America, and many, many other things. And really, Richard embodies the commitment of lay leadership in American Jewry. We're talking about a person that I think over the last, I don't know how many years, at any given moment, is dedicating his time to at least a few organizations, right? You always, it's truly remarkable, and it's a great honor to be him. Richard Sandler. To my right, Barry Shrage. Barry Shrage is the president of CJP, which is Greater Boston's Jewish Federation, since 1987. So it's been 20 years?
It's about 120.
Yes. No, 30 years, Barry.
20 Jewish.
Depends how you count.
Yes. Anyhow, I just want to tell you again, we're really privileged again. Under Barry's leadership, CJP has become a leader and a model on a variety of fronts. Sorry for summarizing along,
Please.
on a variety of fronts in terms of Jewish federations. Those of you that know the Jewish federations of North America will know what a remarkable leader is sitting here on our right. Few things that I will mention on Taglit Birthright, on their special relationship and partnership with the city of Haifa, on the many, many other things. But in our case, a path-breaking relationship with the Israeli community. And this is remarkable, and Barry, thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
Shawn Evenhaim has already been introduced very briefly, board member and chairman emeritus of IAC, was raised in Israel, came to the United States after his service as an officer in the IDF. His business career has been in real estate, where he has had really significant and remarkable achievements. And he is a person that is engaged in variety of leadership roles in his community. He's now also board member of Taglit Birthright Foundation, and probably some other things that I didn't mention, but Shawn, Jewish Federation of Los Angeles, yes, Los Angeles connection. So this is Shawn. Again, thank you, Shawn. And finally, on the far right, Yael, Yuli Tamir. So she's the president of Shenkar. How would you describe Shenkar? I don't want to do my words.
Shenkar is the College of Art, Design and Engineering, one of the best colleges in that field in Israel, and globally now ranked as one of the top 10 colleges in art, design and engineering in the world.
But in the context of our meeting today, it's not just about arts, although there's art in the conversation. She's the past Minister of Education, a past long-term member of the Israeli Knesset. She's a professor of political philosophy of Tel Aviv University that has been trained also in Princeton and Harvard and Oxford. Really are looking at a top-notch academic scholar here. She's one of the founders of the Peace Now movement. And she's really a person, I don't think there's been a day in your adult life that you've not been involved in some sort of public service. Am I correct?
Yes,
So a true public servant of Israeli society and the Jewish people. So Yuli Tamir on our right. Okay, so here's how we're going to do it. Every panelist is going to answer basic question. Is this important for Israel to be the nation state of the Jewish people? And why? And why? And also, in big picture, what does it mean for Israel to be the nation state of the Jewish people in the 21st century? I've asked all our panelists to limit their opening remarks for 4 minutes, so that's 20 minutes altogether. Hold your breath, and then we're giving the ball over to you. Yuli, please.
Okay, good morning. I'm very pleased to be here. First of all, the first answer is probably very simple. Yes, it is. This is why we are here. We believe that Israel is the nation state of the Jewish people. And the question is, in what way does it fulfill that historical role? Let me say two things about, because nationalism is my academic field of expertise, let me say two things about self-determination and self-definition. As you know, I'm the left here, so I'm allowed to disagree with the Prime Minister. Nations are not seeking approval from the outside. Nations are determining themselves. That's the whole essence of self-determination, and I'm yet to see another nation asking others to acknowledge its existence. It's a sign of weakness. Most nations, think about the British these days, or the Irish, or whoever is now asking for self-determination, people make a declaration and they stick to it. So what does it mean to stick to your determination? It is a matter of choice. Again, unlike most people who think that nationalism is a matter of fate, for me it's a matter of choice. It's my choice to be here, it's your choice to be here, and it's our mutual choice to have a relationship. And the question, the real question, is how do we structure this relationship? So in order for this to work in the 21st century, I don't know what the 21st century particularly adds to it. It was true from the 19th century onwards. Maybe it's easier on the internet and Twitter, but it doesn't make a massive difference. The real question is whether you, like the people who are here, would like to have a sincere relationship with Israel, and whether Israel would like to have a sincere relationship with Israelis and Jews all around the world. Now, sincerity for me is about a real open negotiations and a very critical one. I don't know of any good relationship, from marital relationship to any kind of community relationship, that are based on total agreement. I think disagreement is what makes the community lively, and by the way, I think this is a very long Jewish tradition, that what people are doing together is having a conversation about what's right. And I think that what we're lacking today is more often, I also felt it last night, is a conversation about what's right for us as a nation. It's a matter of sticking together to our decisions when we decide that that's what we want to do. My teacher, my great teacher, Professor Isaiah Berlin, used to say that what makes him a member of the Jewish nation is a deep sense of pride and shame. And he said, the reason I'm proud or shameful of what other Jews do is because I feel we are part of each other. I feel that I belong. So I think we should work on that sense of belonging. I'm afraid too many people in Israel and abroad are giving up on that relationship. I think educationally, this is one of the most important tasks. We will be able to be successful if we open options and if we open very interesting ways of dialogue. Not one way of dialogue, but many ways of a dialogue. And that dialogue should be helping all of us to ask who we are and where do we want to go. So just one last word. If you think we're unique, we're not. I've just come from England from a conference on national identities, and strangely enough, everybody asks the same question. But this is a very active dialogue everywhere, and I think we should tie into this global dialogue from the point of view that we want to have an ongoing long-term relationship between Israel and its diasporas, whether Israelis or Jews, but we want this dialogue to create a new reality and a new understanding of partnership. This conference is going, as you said, halfway now. It's maybe 3/4 of the way because the hall is getting fuller and fuller, but I think we are not yet there, and that's the task of the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Yuli, for kicking us off and to roughly sticking on time. Good for you, good for us. I see Yuli actually raised an important point. What's special about the 21st century? I just want to throw out two ideas and then hand it over to Shawn. The first is we are in a period of unprecedented affluence, influence, and power of the Jewish people. Never in the history was it as good for the Jews as it is now. The second thing is the majority of Jews soon will be living in the land of Israel. It's the first time since Second Temple era. So I think these are two aspects that are really remarkable in this moment in time. And now I want to hand it over to Shawn, please.
So I agree with what Yuli stated, and I want to make sure that everyone understands. I don't speak on behalf of the IAC here, I speak on behalf of myself, but I'm one that believes, by the way, it's not just important, it's essential to both communities, to the survival of Israel and to the survival of the Jewish community here. But I'm one that believes that there is a fine line somewhere, even as an Israeli American, of what rights I have to tell Israel what they must do and how they can conduct themselves and really design their future, and where is this line? And it's a very fine line. So I believe the people of Israel, even as an Israeli American that not serve in the IDF anymore, I don't think I have the same rights as my friends that send their kids to the IDF and serve on reserve. I do have a right to communicate and share what my opinion, but I don't think I can demand for such a input. I think what we're lacking today is more communication. I think we're looking at what divides us more than what unites us, and there are more things that unite us. And you know, even in the United States, we're talking about the Israeli-American community, the Jewish-American community, and every time we look at what uniting us, we're doing great things in Boston, in New York, in many other places. Same thing needs to happen between the diaspora and Israel. This is something that needs to maybe more be formalized, and I know, Gidi, we talked a little bit in the past about maybe there should be a body of think tanks between the diaspora representative and the State of Israel, because we both have to understand that everything that we do here and everything that they do there impact both communities. So this is very, very important. And you mentioned education. One of the challenges that I see, at least since I got to this country, is the understanding of the younger generation here about Israel and the understanding of the Israelis about the diaspora. There are great things out there that able to change that a little bit, and one of them is obviously Jewish education. I see Dr. Powell here, which if you don't know, he's one of my idol in regard to Jewish education. But what do we do with that? Birthright. Birthright is essential and so important for that. Just a week ago in Los Angeles, I met a soldier that was on one of the buses on Birthright, and she mentioned and it's called the Mifgashim, if you don't know, on any bus there are either students or soldiers, and how did that impact her? She decided she's going to change all her plans for her life. She's going to come and try to be here as shlicha, understand this community, and try to do everything she can through her life to be the bridge of the two communities, because she said that she never understood the Jewish community, what it means, until she met Jewish young adults on a bus in Israel. So what can we do and what we should do? One of the things that I kept hearing from my American friends when I came to the United States is the impact of the Sunday school. The Sunday school is a solution about Jewish education and understanding and connecting you to Judaism in Israel. Most of them said no, but we all know that Jewish education is very, very expensive, and it's not a simple solution to say, oh, we put everyone in Jewish education. Same thing what we're doing in Israel, how we include in their educational process understanding of what it means to live in the diaspora, what it means to be a Jew not in Israel. Yesterday we spoke to an individual that was so that said, she called it the snow globe. When you live in Israel, you don't have to think Judaism. You don't have to, it doesn't matter if you're Orthodox, Reform, Conservative in Israel. You breathe, you hear Israel, Judaism every day. If it's Friday, if you've been to Israel, I'm sure most of you have been to Israel, you don't have to think about Friday. You don't have to think about holidays. How do we ensure that people that live here get the same feelings? And I know it's not simple, but how do we make sure that they understand what it means to be Jewish and to be connected to Israel? So I'll keep my remarks shorter than Giuliani this time.
Baruch Hashem.
Giuliani now is the gold standard. Barry Shrage, please. Thank you, Shawn.
So since you pointed out your teacher, my greatest teacher who taught me more about what it means to be a Jew than anyone else in the world was a short little guy with a funny green military cap who was sitting in the middle of the room, Natan Sharansky. He left. I wish he were here. And that's really part of the point of that I want to make. This group is so incredibly important. It's why we embraced the IAC so strongly in Boston. We are sitting at the crossroads of history from a Jewish perspective. This is a hinge of history. This hinge can go in either direction. All of our next generation is at stake. Actually, I don't buy the idea that because you have Saturday instead of Sunday, that this will assure your Jewish survival. You've had many generations of coercive and corrupt religious leadership that's done its best to destroy the spirituality and the love of the Jewish people and the love of God. And until that's gone, it's going to be darn hard to resurrect the sense of spirituality and connection that needs to tie us together, however we want to define it. Israelis refuse to use the word religion, but the word spirituality is open. It's an open idea. Wrestling with the idea of spirituality is something that we can teach you. It's something that we in the American Jewish community know real well. We haven't succeeded at it, but we struggle with it. We think about it. This is a time of gigantic change. The founders' dreams of the state of Israel are dying as they had to. The socialist dreams are gone. The Zionist dreams are changing. A definition of what it means to be the nation state of the Jewish people. Did the Rabbanu turn my microphone off? Maybe the Kadosh Baruch Hu himself has a problem.
Good.
Do I get my 30 seconds back? Good. So what replaces those dreams? The immigrant dreams of my grandfather are disappearing. The hopes that he had, the thought that he had that the ethnicity of the Jewish people could somehow survive in this American environment is also changing. Israeli Americans are quickly learning that maintaining their connection to the kind of Jewish identity they had in Israel is impossible without struggling along with the American Jewish community to define this sense of spirituality, this sense of connection. And I loved what Professor Tamir, what do I use?
Yuli.
Minister Tamir said, except for one thing. The dialogue is critically important. The argument is critically important. But the one thing that can't be taught and needs to precede that is love of the Jewish people. You know, it's not natural in the fourth generation of freedom for American Jews to feel this ethnic connection, this sense of love for our own people. And if that disappears, you want to wonder why kids don't want to learn things in Jewish schools. Why learn a Jewish thing more than a Hindu thing or a Buddhist thing or a Christian thing? The starting point is love of the Jewish people. With love of the Jewish people, we can have, and we ought to have, a terrific argument about what the fate of the Jewish people is because we are deeply connected. We cannot survive without each other. It is simply impossible. The one thing that Birthright shows us more than anything is that encounter provides something that no level of Jewish education can provide. It's an instantaneous sense of love of the Jewish people. That makes dialogue possible. And it's the same thing with the IAC. It's this idea that together we can learn how to love each other and respect each other and care about each other enough so that we can shape a brand new sense of Jewish identity together. But the predecessor of that, the predicate, needs to be this sense of connection to the Jewish people. We need the IAC to do that. You will see that what we will have in the next generation of Jews will be the people who had deep Jewish identities to begin with, or that had a birthright experience to shape their sense of loving the Jewish people. Then we have to do much more with it. That's our common responsibility to shape our future.
Thank you, Barry Shrage. Barry, we have a panel tomorrow. This is the pitch of the panel tomorrow. Anyhow, so I want to move to Richard and Oi and ask you to spend a little bit of your time on the role of Israel. Like, we've had some opening remarks about what is Israel's role in this partnership? What do you expect from Israel? What do you want from Israel? What do you think Israel should do in order to strengthen this relationship? Richard, please.
Well, the first question I asked myself regarding this panel, and it goes to what do we expect of Israel, is it important for there to be a Jewish people? If we're going to be the homeland or the nation state of the Jewish people, what is the role of the Jewish people in the world today versus the last several thousand years? And I think in terms of the fact that today, the Jewish people are 0.2% of the entire world's population. That's it, 0.2%. There's approximately 14 million of us in a world of 7 billion people. Yet that 0.2% has changed the world through history. If you just look at Nobel Prizes, 23% of all Nobel Prizes have been won by Jewish people. Now, I saw somebody clapping, we take pride in that, but what does that really mean? How did that really happen? Is it because we're smarter than everyone else? 0.2% of the world's population has almost a quarter of all these prizes. High in science, even in peace area, in every area. So what is it because of? To me, it's not because we're smarter than everyone else. It's because we are from a value system. Barry talks about spirituality. We come from a value system. It comes from the Torah. No matter what era we live in, those values do not change. We are put on this earth to make a difference, to make the world better, and to use our talents to do that. So when I think of Israel, I think of my first trip to Israel in 1964 with my father, Abba Shalom. My father was an immigrant from Latvia. He grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, not a hotbed of Jewish spirituality, but he came from a very observant and learned background. We got off the plane in Israel in '64. He got on his knees, he touched the ground, and he said, Shekianu, because he did not take Israel for granted. His father, his grandfather, his great-grandfather, for 2,000 years from the destruction of the temple, our ancestors dreamed to return to the state of Israel in order to live Jewish values. So what is the responsibility of Israel? It's the responsibility of all of us to be the representative, the light unto nation of Jewish values. So when I am asked, is it important? Yes, it's important, because we make a difference in the world. We make a difference to our children. We make a difference to people we don't know. We are basically the people who came from the Torah, which is a value system. So no matter how the world changes, no matter how things change, if we don't teach those values to our children here in the United States and in Israel, then we're losing something. And then the question of whether it's the nation state or not the nation state does not become the important question. But as long as we are making a difference in the world, and when you can bring 2,000 people to a convention here at the IAC, when this event didn't even exist 4 years ago, when they had 700 people their first year, and now you have 2,000 people, yes, we will continue to exist, but we will continue to exist because of those values. And that's what it means to me to have Israel as the centerpiece of who we are and where we come from.
Thank you. And now, Uriel Reichman. Uri, please.
190 years ago, a revolution took over the Jewish people. It was a revolution in the words of David Ben-Gurion. He said the revolution of the Jewish people was a rebellion against historical destiny. The destiny of an exiled people dispersed with no homeland, common language, culture, and independence. And that revolution...
Uri, you gotta speak close to the mic.
No?
You gotta speak close to the mic. Have the microphone.
Rabbi Shrage thought that they closed the phone while he spoke. This didn't operate from the beginning, so thank you very much. The Zionist revolution is not entirely, although 119 years passed and we are 68 years after the Declaration of Independence, it's not entirely understood. What is exactly the relationship between Zionism and Judaism as we understood it before? What is the role of what is happening? Zionism changed the situation. And the question that I would start with and ask myself, continuing Mr. Sandler and Rabbi Shrage remarks, is what is the value system of Israel that can create a bondage between Jews in the diaspora and that are not necessarily thinking of moving to Israel or being part of Israel and Israel. And one has to go and look in the basic values of Zionism and ask ourselves whether the basic values of Zionism are relevant today. Could they continue to be a source of connection between the diaspora and Israel? And going over the original ideas of Zionism, looking at Herzl, looking at Ben-Gurion, looking at Jabotinsky, the two last were clear disciples of Herzl, you find out that Zionism had a tremendous message. First, the message that Rabbi Shrage mentioned, the declaration that the Jewish people are a nation, are a people. And it's regardless if you are religious, if you are Orthodox or Reform, or you are an atheist, there is some connection between the Jewish people. Then, of course, there was the idea of coming back, and it was a messianic, actually, message for a non-religious movement that said that's the only place where we can build our homeland. And the idea was very simple. The basic idea is a place for the Jewish people to be free men, a place where the dignity and happiness of the Jewish people can be rebuilt. And the idea behind it was more complex than we think about it. There was an idea, Herzl saw it of great importance, that the Jewish state will become one of a family of nations, accepted by everybody. He spoke about democracy at a time that nobody spoke. He was one of the first thinkers that advocated the right of women to vote. And the reason we forget it, he looked at the future Israeli in his novel, very boring novel, but the most important, I would say, in our history, in recent history. He confronted the issue of the relationship of the Jewish state vis-a-vis the Arabs. And the major drama of the novel of Alt Neuland was whether Arabs can become citizens and have the right to vote in the Jewish state he thought about. And there was a debate where an extreme Orthodox rabbi who was in the beginning against Zionism came and ran in order for election, denying the rights of Arabs to vote, but he was defeated. And Herzl makes it clear that the Jewish state is a state that embraces human beings. In his vision, in Jerusalem, he said there will be Beit HaMikdash, which was described as a reform, actually, reform temple, because he heard the Zimrat Nashim Ola Mia Beit Mikdash, Erev Shabbat. But he said in the middle of the old city, there will be a huge building with light, with scientists and peace-loving people from all over the world. It was inspired by Isaiah. We'll assemble there and we'll look for peace in the world. And then in the book of Alt Neuland, he is saying, the hero is saying, now, as we Jews, we're able to have a country of our own and have independence, we should take care that the blacks in Africa will have also this right of freedom. There is a universal message. Of course, the message of the Jewish people, the idea that we have to live in solidarity. But the basic issue, the basic message of the Jewish state, according to Herzl, was that it is an eternal undertaking. Zionism, he said, is an eternal undertaking because we should always aspire for morality, achievement. And one more sentence, because that is very important in the connection. If you take Ben-Gurion, in the beginning of the state in the 50s, Israel was faced with enormous problems. It has to absorb as many people in a short period of time as the total number of the population, as if the United States had to absorb 400 million at once in 3 years. It had to deal with cultivating the land. Only 10% was cultivated at the time. and the danger of another attack by the Arab armies was enormous. He said, Ben-Gurion said, it is a danger that even the heart of a lion will chatter. But then he said, Ben-Gurion said, in face of all those enormous difficulties, he said that Israel, the state of Israel, will not be judged by its military might, by its technology or its wealth. It will be judged by its moral standing into the future. Here is exactly what is connecting and should connect us and the diaspora, and we have to think about it, what unites us. And Ben-Gurion also said at the time, what are the resources of that morality? And he said, it is Hanevi'im, he said, it is Avahavta lereacha kamocha, and he said, it B'Tselem Elokim, Baraita Adam. That are the essential. But at the same time, he said, it is also the liberal human rights contribution of all the countries. So when we look at the relationship, we have to be creating a connection based on the very survival of the Jewish state, basic survival of the Jewish state, which is the most important element, but at the same time, it's its moral standing, which should unite us all. And that is exactly the message that Ms. Sandler and Mr. Shrage, Rabbi Shrage, said. There is a lot of what we can do in order to do it, but in order not to make Gidi too upset, I'll stop here.
So, now over to you. And I'd like to, I don't know if we have mics while Shai figures out the whole mic situation. Otherwise, you may need to shout
Gidi,
from where you are.
Can I take back a minute I gave you in the beginning?
Just a moment. I just want to focus the second part of our meeting today, of our conversation today, about the role of Israel in concrete terms. So
Okay.
what does it mean in terms of Israel's Jewishness and democracy? What does being the nation state of the Jewish people means for Israel when we come to make decisions on national security? Is there a standing for, should Israel give a standing to diaspora Jews on its own decisions on national security? What does it mean in the field of education? What does it mean in the field of aliyah? What does it mean when it comes to Israel economic and welfare policies? The way we treat the Arab minority, lawmaking and judiciary. These are really concrete issues where this issue is being played out. So, Yuli, with your permission, what I'd like to do, if you don't mind,
Okay.
everybody's going to be able to respond to all these panelists, but I want to bring in some questions from the audience. We're going to take a few questions. You may direct them to a specific speaker, but everybody's going to be able to answer any question that comes out for the audience, and then we'll do another round, and hopefully we'll have time for a third round as well. So, anybody who wants to make a question and a comment, it's really a sentence or two. I'll do like this, and when my fingers touch, we move on. So please, who wants to be first? Please.
Stand up.
Stand up and speak loudly because there are no mics. Oh, there is a mic.
That's a big mic.
That's a mic?
Talking about branding.
All right. My name is Jacob Kritsky, and I'm on the board of the huge AA Federation in New York. And this question is for Richard, actually. One of the main problems of most of the federations and the way that we debate over them over and over again is about every time that we talk about the state of Israel with the American Jews here in the United States. And it's a topic that basically says that it's too complicated. Let's not go there because we have too many political, parts of the aisle. And I think that the problem that we have here is that if there is a connection to the state of Israel, and the federations in the United States cannot avoid the topic. And nobody knows.
So the question is?
So the question is how you, as looking at the big picture, see that connection with the state of Israel between the American Jews and the state of Israel.
Okay, so it's basically, okay. More questions. If anybody wants to ask, please stand up, please. We just take a bunch. Go ahead. Loud and short.
Question for Shrage. Given what you said about corrupt and coercive leadership and taking into account constraints of parliamentary politics, what do you think is the way forward for that?
The question is so easy, even my balagala.
Please, go ahead.
What is the one thing that you would do to enhance the connection between the diaspora and Israel?
Anybody else? Gali Albin.
How aware are the American Jews to the fact that what eventually, God forbid, will destroy the state of Israel are the
The internal.
The infighting.
of the situation in Israel, which generals and ex-leaders are now announcing every day. What will we do?
Please, go ahead. Uriel Alevi.
Given the coexistence and mutual dependence of the Jewish diaspora and Israel, what do you think about allowing Jews all over the world to vote in the Israeli elections, as many other countries allow their citizens to vote when they're outside of the country?
Please, over there. Two more, and then we'll have another round. Please, go ahead.
To connect to the conference, I would like to hear what you think the specific role of Israeli living outside of Israel, Israeli Americans, are in this relationship.
Another one?
Due to the growing terrorism and victims here and in Israel, how do you see the legislation going forward so that the laws affecting victims here and in Israel get allowed?
Legislation on what?
Legislation about victims. You know, like Facebook, where there's incitement to terror on Facebook, and there's immunity, and the terrorist victims in Israel, and they can't get any remedy because they're in Israel. How do you see the legislation going forward in that aspect?
Anybody else? This round, please. One last one.
In regards to education, I heard a lot of comments from you about morals, values, or next generation raise directly to our kids. I want to know how much emphasis should be put on Jewish day schools and wherever they are and wherever they are, and who should be focusing on helping their legitimacy.
Thank you very much. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to ask every panelist to spend 2 minutes, choose one of these topics or respond. They can also respond to each other. And then we're going to do another round, 2 to 3 minutes. If we all stick to the time, we'll have another round. I just want to focus on the perspective of what is the role of the State of Israel. These are big questions that they could discuss from many different angles. But today we're here to explore what does it mean to be the nation state of the Jewish people from the perspective of Israel. Yuli, please.
Yeah, I appreciated the wise words of the panel, but I just felt a little bit uncomfortable. I think that we are holding a debate here that is totally disconnected from the reality outside the room, and that should be mentioned. I don't think Israel now presents a set of shared values we can be proud of. Not in the sense of social equality, not in the sense of tolerance, not in the sense of reserving human liberties. I mean, you can't sit here and have this role of, thank you. I'm not alone, I'm happy. Because one thing that can make this dialogue work is sincerity. If we don't talk about the real issues, if we don't talk about what happens in Israel, and by the way, not only in Israel, you have, as American, your own troubles, and my God, everybody has now around the world troubles. But just sitting here and seeing ourselves as a light to the nation and think that this will work, this doesn't work in the 21st century because every child with a video camera on their phone shows you a different picture. So my question is, how do we sell the real Israel with its problems, with its moral difficulties, with the very big dilemma, as Galia mentioned, within Israel, to real people who have real empathy and are ready, despite all the problems Israel is facing, identify with Israel and help us discuss, I wouldn't even say solve, discuss how to become better, because no way we can define ourselves as a light into the nation. We are a state, not only a nation, we are a state in crisis. We should be acknowledging that. Now, one thing about Jewish education, I think that children are the first to discover when you just sell them slogans. As a Minister of Education, I used to come to schools, and I knew immediately that, there are all these wonderful, slogans on the wall. Then it was in Hebrew, "Acher ze ani," the other is me, myself, whatever. Children detect it in a second, and especially youth. If we don't talk a real, open dialogue with them, they will not choose to be with us. And as I said, it's all about choice. And the first choice we made is, do we sit here on plenaries and just say about, Jewish values, or do we stick to the reality and fight what is bad in order to become better?
Thank you. Okay, Shawn, I just need you to be a little bit shorter, because otherwise we're not going to get to everybody in another round.
I'll touch
Shawn,
three of the points, and I'll be very quick. Voting, my personal opinion, that, as I mentioned earlier, I don't have the same rights as my friends that still live in Israel and send their kids. At the current situation, that's my personal opinion. I don't think we should have the right to vote, and the Jewish community too. Israel is a very unique country. It's different than many other countries. Jewish education, it's something that's very close to my heart. Me and my wife invested a lot of time and money in it. I think that we as a community, when I'm saying we as a community, I mean the Israeli American community and Jewish American community failed in that respect. Jewish community must be more affordable. We're investing a lot of money in other things. We must start investing in Jewish education, and we must learn. In Los Angeles, I'll just give you an example. In Christian school, there are schools that have 40% Jews in them because they are great and they are not expensive. Jewish education is a big topic. The other thing is our role as the IAC. So when I came to this country, I became more religious. I got closer to my Judaism when I left Israel, really. To me, we as Israeli Americans don't know what it means to live in the diaspora, period. I don't know, and none of my friends knew when we got here, and I learned really from my Jewish friends. So we have a lot to learn from each other. What we can bring is there are a lot of things that we can bring. The language is very important, the culture, and we can really be the bridge that connects between the two communities.
Thank you, Shawn. Barry Shrage, I know Uri Reichman referred to Barry as a rabbi. You're not a rabbi, right?
Yes, please give me a break.
He's not a rabbi, and there's absolutely no chance that the rabbinate in Israel approves Barry Shrage, no matter how frum he is. Go, Barry.
So a couple of questions, and they're related. And so I'm not an expert on anything in particular. That's why I have the job that I have. And but one thing that I have cared about very deeply is Jewish education, very, very deeply. But I want to frame this in just 2 minutes around the idea of mifgash, which you represent so importantly. Sharing values in an honest way is essential, and having the debate is essential. I'm looking for the next generation of Israeli and American Jews to be so connected that they'll be seeing each other's news and opinions on their Facebook pages. Mm-hmm. That happens, again, there has to be a mifgash for that to happen. People think I'm fanatic about birthright only because I've cared so deeply about Jewish education, and I recognize that a sense of Jewish identity must precede, sense of connection and interaction must precede any sense of caring about Jewish education, and if they don't care, you can't teach them. By the way, money is not the whole answer to this question. We could give every last dime that the Federation has to day school education. It would still be too expensive. Do the math. What I'm saying here is that a generation that cares. The Orthodox community is the least affluent community in America, and nearly 100% of their kids go to day school. It's not just a question of money. It's a question of priority. Priority comes from love and a sense of commitment. That's what's going to. I am looking to that next generation of birthright kids to be touched by us, which we've totally failed to do, and move them forward into this sense of deeper connection, interaction with other Jews. And it's also the answer to the question about the Rabbanut, because I have no other answers. What we try to do in Haifa is bring as many kids and parents and teachers to the United States as we can, because it's in those Reform synagogues that they will learn that there are two lies that the Rabbanut told them. One lie is that they have the right to control their lives. The second is that Other kinds of Judaism are a joke and a defamation of Jewish life. You walk into a Reform synagogue, you see the kids, it's not totally beautiful, you know the failures of American Jewry, but guess what? Listening to a woman rabbi is not ugly, it's beautiful. Listening to a woman chant Torah is not ugly, it's beautiful. And it's out of that our hope is that you will demand, that you will simply tell the Rabbanut that they do not matter to their spiritual or religious lives and build your own in a much better way.
Thank you. Richard.
I agree, obviously, with Barry that debate is essential. When you talk about what confederations do, what can we all do? The fact is we live in a society today where we do not have civil discussion on issues that we disagree with. If you agree with me, you're on the side of the angels. If you disagree with me, you're on the side of the devil. We do not listen to each other. We don't learn from each other. In fact, most of us speak with no knowledge about what we're speaking about. We just know how emotional we are on the topic. So, yes, we do have a responsibility to have forums, to bring people together, as we are here today, to have people informed of what the facts are, so before they express their opinion, they at least understand the background and what the other side is thinking and why they believe that. Vis-a-vis Israel and its responsibility, you know, it's got problems, but it's 68 years old. I know that because I'm 68 years old, and I got problems. But the fact is that when this country, the United States of America, is still considered the greatest country on the planet, was 68 years old, it had serious problems. Okay, when it was 80 years old, it had a civil war. So we have problems, but we can recognize the problems and still realize what we agree with. Shawn talked about earlier. We have things we agree about. If we start with what we are the Jewish people. What does that mean? What should we do with that? What are our problems? Because when I think about Israel as a light upon nations, there's a general sitting here in our front row. I remember the most spiritual time I had in Israel. I was sitting in the Reut right after the Second Lebanon War. And I had a privilege of meeting with General Eshel from the Air Force. And he was talking about the lengths that pilots have to go to before they bomb a building to make sure there are not civilians there. And the fact that they go on a run and they have an assignment, before they let that bomb go, they have to get another clearance. And one of the people on the trip looked at General Eshel and he pointed to him and he says, "General, who makes that decision? Who makes that decision that you are going to spare the life of civilians in Lebanon and make the civilians in Israel at risk? Who makes that decision, General? Do you make that decision?" And General Eshel looked to the ground and he looked this guy in the eye and he said, "That decision was made on Mount Sinai several thousand years ago." That's what Israel represents to me.
Uri.
In my view, it is essential that the younger generation of Jews in diaspora will come to Israel. For one, I would recommend, of course, that they will come study at IDC. Jonathan Davis is sitting here, and actually hundreds of students from all over the Jewish world came to Israel. 70% of them make Aliyah, but those who go back back home become for forever connected to the story of the Jewish state and to Israel. So in my view, it is essential. If not, come and study at IDC, at least come for 1 year or on birthright and so on, but creates a younger generation, especially of the Israeli-American community, has to send over the kids in order to be part, if not to the army, at least to study and so on. That is vital if the connection has to continue. The second issue is, of course, education in this country. The problem is that the only way to keep non-Orthodox, the non-Orthodox next generation, is to provide an elite kind of education, of general education, together with the Jewish heritage. What connects us? The value system and the historical background and the connection and so on and so forth. That is what keeps us together. And it's understandable that it's more difficult for a non-Orthodox to go to a religious school, but if you provide them with excellent education in reasonable cost, they will go there. And that should be the number one educational system in this country. And finally, let me say only one word. It is true Israel has problems and debates, but there are those people who believe, and that was the very basic of Zionism, which we have to emphasize and fight for from all kinds of songs, of building Chevrat Mofet. And I believe that with all the difficulties, with the commitment of many, we should continue to fight for Chevrat Mofet, for the values that connect us, the values of the prophets, of social justice, of other things in this country that can unite us both from abroad and from Israel.
So I think actually, if you listen carefully, Yuli and Reichman, they sound as if they disagree, but I think you agree on a lot.
What?
A lot.
We have a history of arguing, disagreeing on many things.
But, I just believe that in order to do it, we need to do public education, open to everyone. But this is a different debate.
Okay.
Free public education.
No.
Okay,
that's,
we have 10 more minutes, really 10 more minutes on the clock. Shai is also walking.
We believe in free enterprise.
Shai, there's already an exchange over my head. Soon they will be in the shelter again, like after the Second Lebanon War. Okay, so we have 10 more minutes. If you have one or two people who want to throw in last question, because what we're going to do last is closing remark. 1, 2, 3, 4 sentences each, please. From Uri, Yuli will get to close because she opened the discussion. Anybody, question or comment? Naama is going to be the last. Please, over there, just stand up quickly, fire out. Fire away. Question. After Taglit, post-Taglit programming. Important. Come to study in IDC. One question on my left.
Exactly.
Please, sir, one sentence.
In my opinion, you can send the kids to the best of Jewish school that money can buy. But when the child comes home and he leaves from Gidi Ranch in Oklahoma or around,
It has to be short.
and his friends are non-Jewish, the likelihood for him to assimilate are much higher than the child who went to public school and came home to Jewish friends.
All right. One more. I'm going to give the privilege of the last question to Naama, and then we're going to close. Naama, please.
Thank you.
Loud.
To all the speakers, it was really fascinating to listen. I think the issue of education that was brought up here is super important. And I must say, I was brought up within the Israeli system. Never, not in the high school, not in the youth movement, not in the pre and post-military programs. I was taught about the Jewish lives outside of Israel. I was never taught to care for them. There is a strong emotion that binds us together, but it's a lot of ignorance, and I think that growing up in Israel makes you not understand Jewish people outside of Israel. So for instance, when you see the scroll of Torah being thrown out of a woman's hand that came to pray for Am Yisrael, it's just really hard to even understand the situation. And I would like to comment on what should change within Israeli education in order for
Brings them together.
Great. Thank you. Thank you to all of you. Uri, we really close.
No,
we have. No, you start. No, you start because she started earlier, and she's going to get the close.
You know, with all the difference of opinions, I really appreciate Yuli Tamir. There is the question of moral perfection, which seems so distant, is part of our life, of Jewish life. We should devote to it in Israel. We should It is imperfect society, but we should do the best. The most important thing, and there are the values that go with us from time immemorial, and those we can continue to fight for. Let me close with a quote from Zechariah, which speaks about our values that we can commit ourselves today. This is what the Lord Almighty said: administer true justice, show mercy and compassion to one another. Do not oppress the widow or the fatherless or the foreigner or the poor. Do not plot evil against each other. I would add, love each other, all the Jewish people.
Good job.
I can't think we could say it any better than that. We are one people. We are one people. We need to care about each other. We've lost that ability. We basically have to understand whether we were born in this country, we're born in Israel, we're born in Iran, we're born in Morocco, it doesn't matter. Whether we're on the left or the right, whether we agree with this Israeli government or a different Israeli government. The fact is we're still one people, and we have to care about each other. And I do agree with my friend Barry Shrage, who I know is not a rabbi. The fact what the rabbinate has been doing in Israel, okay, is really destructive to our value system and to who we are.
Absolutely agree with you. The question, who is a Jew, should be a question not only of the Orthodox, should be the question of us all.
Yes.
Very. So I would just suggest that while it's essential to begin with love and a sense of connection, and if we have that, we can have a great deal of dialogue. But I would also say that if you look at the data on the next generation of American Jews, increasingly define themselves as progressive. And while Israel needs to do everything it needs to do to defend itself for its security, and to do that, unfortunately, people die and rights can be changed, it's at least essential to consider the impact on Israel's security of completely alienating, not by doing things that you need to do for your security, but by doing things that have nothing to do with your security that end up alienating people and making Israel look like some right-wing state, which it's not. How do we make ourselves look worse than our enemies that cross the border that are killing people like crazy? This takes talent. So I would say be a little careful in your politics, because your security also depends on the relationship with the United States and American Jews. And finally, I love Zechariah. So I would my favorite phrase, I was going to name a book that I may write in 30 years after this, which is, so Zechariah says, this is what God says: I have scattered you among the nations, but I will whistle, and in the distant places you will return.
Amen.
Thank you. First, I'd like to thank everyone on this panel for attending this conference. For me, it's like a dream come true to see what's happening here in DC, and for me to sit on this panel with the individual that here is really an honor. But to touch the few questions that you asked, first, what can be done with birthright taglit after? They tried that, it didn't work. We must continue. That's something that very important to me as a board member of Taglit, of Birthright Israel, is to make sure that, I don't think we need to execute it, but the Jewish community, the Israeli American community, can take that and follow up and make sure that it's continuing, that it's not just a 10-day experience. Although there are a lot of research that's showing that it's amazing and it's successful, and like Barry said, we'll see the results, we still need to do much more. Again, education in Israel, Naama, to your question, I think it's so important. I have 3 boys, they all did exchange students with Israel in school, some of them 2 weeks, some of them 3 months. When the Israeli come to the United States for either 2 weeks or 3 months, the change in them is amazing. We can't bring every child from Israel to the United States. We need to make sure that part of their education is understanding the diaspora and what it means to live in the diaspora. Again, Birthright is doing an amazing job with the Mifgashim, but that's only a few thousand people. We need to get to everyone.
Yuli.
I'll just say that I think we need, and this is where the 21st century is really effective, we need to use the tools of the 21st century. I don't invite people to come and study in Shenkar because Shenkar is extremely selective school and it's very hard to get in, so I don't want anyone to get too disappointed. However, what we do, and I think this is part of a real dialogue, we talk with people in Israel and abroad, by the way, not only Jews, about creativity, about how to have a dialogue that is based on the new tools of the new media. And the new media is something that we should take into account, because people today, they love to blog, they love to put on their own videos, they love to be able to negotiate with other people on issues that are relevant to their own life, and they love to do something that was mentioned earlier. They love to be permitted to reinterpret Judaism in a contemporary light. And I think that one beautiful thing that we do in Shenkar with regard to Jewish identity and with regard to dealing with the Jewish heritage is to learn, but then allow to renew and reinterpret and create something new. And if at the end of the day, Beyonce goes on the Emmy with actually a traditional Jewish bridal gown that was created in Shenkar, then some people see what we do that are not in this room, would never come to this room, but then they look at Israel in a different light, and I think that is our role in making Israel look better and more relevant to young people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to say thank all the panelists for a great discussion. We're going to have in a few minutes a panel here that looks at the American perspective on this question. Please join us. Start.
I get all the notes from previous panel.
Okay. So, okay, everybody. Welcome this morning. And it's great to have all of you here. My name is Gidi Grinstein. I'm the founder and president of a team in Israel called the Reut Group. What we do is we're a non-profit that uses in-depth research and strategy work with design and technology to create models and ideas that address some of the big challenges that face the state of Israel and the Jewish people. We do it across a broad range of issues, but what is relevant for our work, for our discussion today, is that as of 2008, our team has been focused on the growing distance between the state of Israel and the Jewish community outside of Israel. This was an extensive piece of work and research, which actually highlighted at the end that one of the biggest blind spots for the entire Jewish people at the time was the way we were looking at the Israeli, what we then called the Israeli diaspora. And I think we may have been one of the first to actually use this term, the Israeli diaspora. Because if you think about it from the perspective of Zionism, the Israeli diaspora is an oxymoron. Because in Zionism, you either have diaspora Jews or you have Israelis. But the Israeli diaspora is something that wasn't in the books of Zionism, at least for many, many years. So we really believe that even when you create a great idea, you have to test it out on the ground. You have to go and meet the people where they are, see what's being done. So we explored North America, and we found 5 very interesting models. One in Florida, one in New York, one in Toronto, one in the Bay Area, in the JCC in the Bay Area, in Palo Alto, and one in Los Angeles. What was special about the event in Los Angeles, which was then called the ILC, is that it was, believe it or not, a group of people that then could be actually housed around one conference room table. This is when we met the ILC. But they had really an ambition to mobilize and organize the Israeli community in the United States of America. 8 years later, this is really astonishing. What's going on here, I think we all need to appreciate it, and especially as someone that was there when, as I said, they could be conferenced around one table, the entire IAC. This is really remarkable what's happening here, and it's really a very short period of time. So since then, we have been in touch, and we've been collaborating a lot with this ILC, Israeli Leadership Council, then turned IAC, Israeli American Council. We've been collaborating with them on multiple ways, and therefore it is an honor for us at Reut, for myself and for Naama that I will present, and David who is sitting here, to be able to contribute to this conference by organizing and hopefully leading the conversation on what does it mean for Israel to be what does it mean to be the nation state of the Jewish people, which is the theme of today. So being the nation state of the Jewish people, since the inception of Zionism, modern Zionism, was always the mission and the core logic of Zionism, except that the meaning of this mission has been evolving over time. And now we're in a very special time in Jewish history. For the first time, very soon, the majority of Jews will be living in Israel, for the first time since the Second Temple era. Second, we are in a period of unprecedented power, affluence, and influence. Never in our history was it so good to be Jewish. Never in our history did we have so much power. In fact, in a matter of 70 years, we moved from powerlessness to being a superpower. It's a huge transition. And therefore, the question, what does it mean to be the nation state of the Jewish people, is really an important question for us in our time. So in order to kick off the conversation, let me just say a few words about how it's going to be running now. I'm going to ask my colleague Naama from Reut to frame the conversation. It's going to be 4 or 5 minutes. And then I'm going to present the panelists, and we have really a great panel here to discuss this issue. Each of these panelists is going to give short opening remarks, as I said earlier this morning, inspired by Giuliani last night. It's going to be very short. And then, we're going to basically invite you to participate by asking or making short comments or questions. And then we're going to go back, and every panelist is going to be able to respond to any question or comment or to anything else the other panelists said. So it's going to be very dynamic. And if we do it well and we're all disciplined, we'll be able to do it 2 or 3 times, and it's going to be more and more exciting toward the end. So that's how it's going to be played out. I want to invite my colleague Naama Klar to present the opening, the frame for the conversation today. Is לך microphone? Okay. Naama is really, when she stood up, really an outstanding young Israeli leader and professional. She's been part of our team at Reut. We're very proud. But beyond that, she's a person that finds the time to be involved with multiple other activities, social activities, really with a stellar record and bright future. Naama, please.
Thank you, Gidi, after those words. So, is it too loud? No. It's fine. Okay. So, today's title is From a Covenant of Fate to a Covenant of Destiny, and I want to explain what it means, because I think those valuable phrases can direct the conversation today towards a deeper understanding of the relationship between Israel and the diaspora Jewry. So in his seminal article, Kol Dodi Dofek, or The Voice of My Beloved Knocks, the renowned Rabbi Soloveitchik, Zichrono Livracha, who actually acted as a living bridge between Israel and diaspora Jewry in his life, had coined 2 valuable phrases, a covenant of fate and a covenant of destiny. The 2 sounds quite similar, but I'm going to explain the difference. So a covenant of fate is we are bound together. First in Hebrew it's Brit Goral, a covenant of fate. And it means that we are bound together by forces which merges us as individuals into one unit. The individual is a subject against his will to the national fate. And it is impossible for him to avoid it and be absorbed into a different reality. We are all persecuted, or we are all saved together. And the second one, the covenant of destiny, in Hebrew, Brit Yehud, means that destiny is our shared future, which we create together. The life of a destiny is a directed life, the result of conscious decision and free will. In the words of Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sacks, destiny is what we do, fate is what happens to us. With the establishment of the State of Israel, the covenant of fate, a safe homeland from persecution, was a wide shared global Jewish project, naturally, and was relevant to every Jew in the world. Today, Israel is strong and prosperous, and Jews are not seeking Israel primarily as a refuge state from persecution. How should this now be reflected on Israel's relationship with the diaspora Jewry? Where in fact are we in the journey from the covenant of fate to the covenant of destiny? Has the covenant of fate already achieved? How do global Jewish communities interpret concepts of fate and destiny as they relate to Israel? How does it differ across the globe, in France, in the US, in Israel? Should these concepts be viewed through some sort of a Maslow hierarchy of needs, meaning the need to first focus on the secure homeland and the refuge for the Jewish people from persecution, and only after it allows us to accomplish the destiny, meaning conversation on Israeli values or vision of the country? However, for how long can this fatalistic focus on security and persecution be maintained? For how long it can create relevancy in a global and ever-changing world? Or maybe it should be viewed the other way around, meaning should Israel first focus on the covenant of destiny, on the meaning, the vision, the inspiration, in order to make sense of the Jewish covenant of fate? This sounds maybe theoretical to you, but it has some applications in Israeli lives and day-to-day politics, meaning to what extent should Israel expect to receive unconditional support from the diaspora Jewry? Or to what extent should there be diaspora intervention within Israeli politics? Or maybe which issues in Israeli politics affect diaspora Jewry's life and therefore they should be involved? In moving the needle from the covenant of fate to the covenant of destiny, Jewish institutions play a major leading role. Therefore, we would like to ask our honorable panelists today, what do they think, what are their thoughts regarding where are we from the covenant of fate to the covenant of destiny? Where should we be and where are we today? Thank you.
Thank you, Nama. And what we'll do now is I'll just introduce all the panelists. And as I do it, I'd like the panelists to think about really to boil down what Nama said into what is possibly a simple question. Is it important for the state of Israel to remain the nation state of the Jewish people? And why is it important to you? Okay? And how is it being played out right now? Opening remarks, and then we'll obviously kick it back and forth between you and the panel. I want to start by introducing the panel. First, all the way to my right, is Dr. Janice Weinman, Shorenstein. Sorry. Born in London, resident of New York City, currently serves as Executive Director and CEO of Hadassah. Okay, so all of you know that Hadassah is one of the most important preeminent Zionist organizations of the 20th century. I can tell you that in our office in Tel Aviv, we had a photo of Henrietta Sold, FYI.
The ultimate Zionist.
Yes, we still have it, which is a remarkable, remarkable woman. And Janice really has a tremendous record of involvement and leadership in a variety of causes, Jewish causes and causes relating to social issues and to women's role and so on. And I've just realized that she's also a member of my shul. I'm the secular member of my Orthodox shul, and she's there, except she's on the women's side. So I don't
also secular.
I don't get to steer as much. Those of you, I said to a few, seriously, I'm the aspiring assistant usher of my shul, which is really the best position to be in the house. But Janice, it's great to be with you.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Lincoln Square. Okay. So, and I didn't say, by the way, that I'm using the prerogative of a moderator to really shorten the bios and focus on what I believe is the most relevant and to us today. And obviously, the panelists are perfectly invited to be very upset with me after the panel if I cut something out. So, Steve Rackett. The formal title is Director of the... No. Stephen Rackett is the CEO and Executive Vice President of the Jewish Federation of Greater Washington. And previously, he was doing basically the same job in Atlanta. And really, you know, when you look at his history, this is a person that spent, I think, your entire adult life serving the Jewish community in North America. One of the top professionals, people that embody what our community needs in order to keep going, which is this dedicated, long-term, high-quality professionalism. Thank you, Steve, for being here. Leonard Sachs, Director of the Cohen Center for Modern Jewish Studies and the Steinert Social Research Institute. So Professor Sachs here is one of the most renowned scholars on multiple fields. But when it comes to the Jewish world, his quantitative research is really the gold standard, I think, for evaluating Jewish programs and assessing the condition of the Jewish community and the Jewish people. He's the editor of more than 250 publications. I think you were behind the seminal work that led to Birthright in 1990. Am I correct?
I began with Birthright and have been studying the Great Agleed as well as the applicants since 1999.
Yes, okay, so really a person who through his academic work has been a shaping force for the Jewish community in North America and also around the world. Leonard Sachs, please. On my left is Rachel Davidson. So Rachel Davidson is the former director of Jewish and Israeli philanthropy at the Paul Singer Foundation. And before that, she was a Superior Court judge in New Jersey. So you're looking at Judge Rachel, right? Like Davidson. Judge Judy? Davidson. Judge Davidson. And so, again, I don't want to read everything. I want to make it more informal. I want to tell you that whenever I speak to IAC board about Rachel, they're saying that they have very few American Jewish leaders who are also understanding the Israeli side the way Rachel is. She's really understands both sides of the equation, and she's a board member, dedicated board member of IAC from New York, and it's really great to have you. Thank you for joining us. And finally, on the left is Russell Robinson. He has served as the JNF, Jewish National Fund, Chief Executive since September 1997, so it's almost 20 years. And he spent really most of his adult life as serving our community. And I want to say that Russell Robinson, this is again my perspective, took an organization whose image and brand was tied to trees and planting trees, and he made it an astonishingly innovative and cutting-edge organization on really a steep growth path that every organization should aspire for. And the programs that JNF are driving are really remarkable, both in Israel and in the diaspora. What is special about Russell is you come to meet him, he can tell you in a minute what are the priorities of the organization and where it is going, and therefore really create real clarity that allows for connection. And I think that this is really a standard for every executive anywhere. So Russell, it's great to be here, one of the great executives. One of the great executives in the Jewish community. So, we're going to start with that. I'm going to begin with Russell. Okay, if you begin, you'll get to close. Okay. Okay, so we're going to begin with Russell. And this is the question. 4 minutes, please. Is it important for the state of Israel to remain the nation state of the Jewish people? Why is it important to you? And what is the role of the diaspora Jewry in this relationship? So earlier we discussed about the role of Israel. Now we're talking about the role of the diaspora. Russell, please.
So thank you, Gidi. I think that you have to look at it in some of the ways that was commented about in the biblical sense. It's way above my pay grade, but you have Breshit, and then you have Noah, and then you have Lech Lecha. Before you have circumcision, before you have kashrut, before you have anything else, it's go forward to a new land. Now, we're the only people with a land that are part of our existence. That is not true in any other religion. Islam, in Christianity, in Buddhism, or Hinduism. So, to be a Jew, we're connected based upon this third chapter, which I thought makes it pretty important, to be connected to this land. So that in itself means that something that we have that as a reality in the Jewish community in Israel or anywhere around the world. The second part is to talk about what you mentioned, Gidi, that in the past 70 years, Jewish power has never been the same as it is today in the history of the world. Now, in that, there's an interesting correlation. It's called the State of Israel. So if we have great Jewish power now, why do we have it now, and why didn't we have it for all those years, for thousands of years? We didn't have the nation state of the Jewish people. And I think that those kind of relationships are very important for us to continue to understand and then to talk about. You talked about from the Second Temple about the population. But it's also our narrative about how we're going to relate to Israel as an American Jewish community. There are no Jews in exile. We won. Now, for some organizations, that's a tough one to swallow. We loved it when we had Jews that were denied the ability to go to Israel so that we could work very hard to get them into Israel. And for us in the American Jewish community who grew up here, that was our narrative. Our narrative was Israel as a nation of exiles. That's where you went because you had nowhere else to go, and we really didn't want you in our neighborhood. And that was true. Soviet Jewry was great if it went to Israel. Ethiopian Jewry was great if it went to Israel. Now, do you understand that this summer, 50,000 people in 10 years made Aliyah from North America? That is a different narrative. 50,000 people made Aliyah from North America in the past 10 years. And I'm going to tell you the difference. When you go with a group of young people that are going and making Aliyah and they're going into the army, it's not the same narrative as in 67 or in 73. In 67 or 73, young Jews went to Israel to save Israel. Today, young Jews go to Israel because they just love Israel. It's a great place. Now, that's a difficult narrative for us in the organized Jewish world because we're used to the wars and we're used to the exiles, and we have to get into what is the new reality with Israel. And it's a partnership. It's not a big brother. And in that partnership, we have to build those kind of communication. And the communication system isn't on the intellectual side only. It's not on the rabbinic side only. It's not from professors from universities and great thinkers that come into think tank. It's from individuals. And if we don't get down to the individual and talk to the individuals that are living in Israel, the individuals that are living in the United States, and have that conversation based upon the shared reality of the third chapter in that famous book, then we do lose. And I don't think we're losing. I think we're gaining. I think the Jewish community is stronger, is greater, is more connected to Israel than ever before. And I challenge the statistics that it's not.
Great. Thank you, Russell. So Russell is speaking about the responsibility of our community to connect, to allow and to create opportunities to connect on the individual level. Rachel, you're next.
Okay. I think I'm going to be the pessimist here.
Just in order to be pessimist and be heard, you have to speak closely.
All right, I'll be a loud pessimist. I think inherent in the idea of Israel as a nation state of the Jewish people is Aliyah, that people are either going to move to Israel or at least it sort of looms as a possibility. And in thinking about the diaspora, I think you really have to cut the diaspora in half and consider the American diaspora, or perhaps the North American diaspora, it certainly would include Canada, and the diaspora in the rest of the world. In the rest of the world, I think that there is still some legitimacy to the idea that Jews' lives are not always secure. There is always a possibility that their lives will at some point not be secure, and that they will sort of be looking towards Israel as a possible refuge. That is not the case in North America. And therefore, if you want to engage Jews in North America and have them support Israel, I think you really have to think along brand new lines. I think the statistics show that support for Israel is waning. And I think that's partly due to a misunderstanding by many Israelis of how Americans legitimately view Israel. Now, I have one foot in each camp. I have an American father and an Israeli mother. So I feel like I can sort of speak truthfully. And I think that there's a very difficult obstacle for Israelis to understand that many things that happen in Israel are deeply uncomfortable for American Jews. I'm not saying there's a choice. I don't have a solution. But if we don't at least acknowledge the problem, there is not going to be a solution. The other problem that I see is that I feel that from 67 until some unknown date, Israelis were very cool for American Jews. And the reason Israelis were cool was because they won the wars and they were tough. And Americans still felt very Jewish. That was a strong identity for them. Now I think Israelis are very cool for Americans. I think the average person that you stop on the street thinks Israelis are cool. The Jews, on the other hand, are starting to think the Israelis are a little bit less cool. And the thing that I really took away from what Natan Sharansky said, and I've heard him now speak, I think, 3 times, that I think we're losing in all of this, is talking about Israel and talking about American Jews and talking about Jews in the rest of the diaspora. And he really talks about, number one, having an identity as a Jew. And again, I think the Pew Report will support the idea that the more Jewish you feel, the more connected to Israel you feel. And if we want to solve this problem, perhaps the first thing we need to do is really sort of pump up Jewish identity everywhere.
Thank you, Rachel. For those American Jews here that have doubt about the coolness of Israelis, I hope they spent last night with Einat Saruf, right?
Yes.
That was special. Len Sachs, please.
Toda. So on the eve of World War II, there were 17 million or so Jews around the world. It has taken us 75 plus years to get back to that number. Currently, 75% of world Jewry lives in Israel and the United States, 7.1 million to be precise in the United States, 6.3 million Jews in Israel. And we need one another. We are too small not to be one people. I don't think Israel can thrive, perhaps even survive, as an isolated nation state. And U.S. Jewry can't thrive and perhaps survive without a relationship to Israel. You know, it's only recent that Judaism was regarded as a religion. We're an ethnicity, we're a culture. We need a cultural capital. We need a place where our language is the language spoken, our calendar, the calendar that people live on. And we are dependent on one another. Now, this panel was created because there's fear that we have drifted apart, that American Jews, diaspora Jews, and Israeli Jews have drifted apart. But in fact, if you look at the statistics, including the Pew study, we have never been closer. Israelis who reside in the United States, Artzot Habrit, have not shed their Israeliness. Many have picked up the Judaism that they didn't perhaps get Ba'aretz, but they haven't shed their Israeliness. And American Jews, in unprecedented numbers, travel to Israel. There's been a 100% increase in less than 25 years in the proportion of American Jews who visited Israel. And even young American Jews are more connected to Israel than they ever were. Now, some claim that there's a political divide between liberal Americans. Most American Jews are Democrats and liberals, and the Israeli government, which is a right-leaning government. Indeed, there is contentiousness about Israel amongst American Jews. But in fact, it's a tame version of the contentiousness that exists in Israel between Israelis about matters political. And in fact, my thesis is that the discord, the contentiousness that we see here is actually a reflection of how engaged American Jews are in Israel, how connected they are, how many people know Israelis. Now, I don't want to know and track Israeli news and go back and forth. Now, I'm not Pollyannish. We live in a very troubled world. We seem to have perfected a system of discourse that allows individuals to create and pay attention to their own realities. But it is this connected world that seems now so disconnected that also makes it so important that whatever failings we have as Jews in being connected to one another, that we work harder to become connected. We as Jews should be modeling the approach that together we can accomplish more than we can accomplish as individuals. As a final comment, I'm a social psychologist, a social theorist, a word about social capital. Some people think that people have become less Jewish in America. They have lost their Jewish identity because they've become universalistic. In social capital terms, it's because they focus on building bridging social capital, not what's called kind of ethnocentric bonding social capital. But my theory and my experience with Birthright Israel in particular teaches me that it is bonding social capital. It is our ability to be part of a family, a community, connected with other people, seeing ourselves as not alone, but interconnected with other people who share our value system that is the heart and soul of how we create a better world. Tada.
Thank you very much. I wish you would have said that there is no growing gap at the end of the panel, because you, first of all, would have kept the raison d'etre of this panel, but I think you may just have killed hundreds of jobs in the Jewish world.
But I've created a whole bunch of new ones about building social capital.
You're the embodiment of what is called constructive destruction.
Right.
All right, Steve Brackett.
The question that we put to us is it important that Israel be the nation state of the Jewish people? My answer is yes. The rest is commentary. Let me tell you about a love story. My first trip to Israel was in 1970, and it was with my father. My dad was born in 1917. He served in World War II. He had a very particular connection to the state of Israel, and it was born out of his personal life experience. And that was how I discovered Israel. It was through his eyes. My children have been to Israel, and they are looking at it very differently. They still love Israel, but they're a bit more honest about their love of Israel than perhaps I was. I was smitten. They're a little bit more conscious of their feelings about Israel. And so while my love for Israel is unconditional, like it is for my family, my concern for Israel is unconditional, as it is for my family, and my support for Israel is unconditional. But like with anyone in my family, my relationship to Israel is very much conditional. It's conditional on a mutuality of concern and mutuality of chavod. That is the difference between today and 40 or 50 years ago. Today, I personally, and many, many in our community, are looking for a connection and a mutuality of kavod, a mutuality of concern, a mutuality of understanding that we are important to one another, and without each other, we fail. In fact, we probably cease to exist. And so that fundamental shift in the history of diaspora-Israeli relationship is, I think, what is the most challenging in the 21st century. And far be it from me to challenge my colleague Len's data, but here in Washington, we took a survey about a year ago, and we asked 1,000 respondents. 40% felt very or extremely connected to Israel. This is self-reported. 27% felt little or no connection to Israel, and the rest, 33%, only somewhat connected to Israel. And then of the half of our community that had not been to Israel, 43% felt little or no connection, and 39% only somewhat connected. So I have no data to talk about the longevity of those numbers. I don't know whether they're up, down, or sideways. But to me, that is a fundamental concern that we can only address with honesty and empowerment.
Janice, please.
Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be here, and thank you, Gidi, for the opportunity. I should admit to you first and foremost that I am a passionate Zionist. but I'm also a practical one. And the current situation, as I see it, Israel being a nation state, is in some respects very troubling. And I'll tell you why. There is no doubt that both the Jew in Israel, the Jew in America, and the Jew in the remaining diaspora has a great deal to be proud of. A great deal to be proud of when it comes to Israel. Whether it is new technologies, breakthrough technological advances. The other night, on Thursday night, I had the good fortune to hear Prime Minister Netanyahu talk about the fact that Israel is growing as one of the greatest cybersecurity resources in the world, from 10% to 20% in big data, in connectivity, in artificial intelligence. And I think people are really proud of that. They're proud of the medical breakthroughs that have been made. I can cite some of the things from Hadassah Hospital, where we've been the first recently in addressing the issues of ALS and MS. Certainly in the whole area of water, energy, and our breakthroughs in terms of the Iron Dome. But what I see that resulting in is a very fragmented, very segmented commitment to Israel. It is as if Israel is not necessarily a homeland. It is a venue, it is a startup nation, but it is not a place in which shared values are experienced both in Israel, here in the United States, and around the world. And why do I say that? I say that because if you do talk to the average Jew, you will see that they know little about the values that bind us, little about the biblical principles that have created our humanitarian activities, little about the various aspects of our history that have formed the foundation and the basis for what we have done in the future. In fact, I think the greatest challenge that we face is those sharing of values that people refer to. And it is not an easy process. It is not an easy process when people challenge some of the behaviors, activities, politics, and policies of the Israeli government. And therefore, the educational system has to occur in a safe, open, interactive environment. An environment in which we do admit to some of the things that are challenges in Israel, where we do admit to some of the changes that perhaps need to be observed under a microscope and discussed and opined on. It has to be an environment also wherein the lessons of what we learn can be applied to communities in America. And let me say a little bit about that. It is all well and good to take young people to Israel, but it is far more important to have follow-up that allows for the continued discussion of what people saw and what people understand and don't understand. So, for example, and I hope you don't mind if I use those that I'm closest to, Hadassah and the Jewish Women's Renaissance Project is going on missions together in Israel. But what is important about those missions? First of all, that they are spiritual. That they are spiritual not in religious terms, but in making women feel the role that they play in the Jewish family. And what is secondly important about that? That for a whole year thereafter, there are a community of people that discuss the issues that they have experienced in Israel and that apply to their community. Similarly, I'm going to be finished in a minute. I'm the only one you started. Similarly, I'd like to say there are many other such experiences where we bring back, and I'd like to underscore one thing, Gidi, and I apologize, and that is where their experiences are not just applied to people who have gone to Israel with you, but to the community in which you live, the community that you can influence, and the community outside of the Jewish context. This is the only way that the nation-state of Israel can move from fate to destiny, because it becomes expanded, it becomes integrated, it becomes infiltrated in a far broader environment than if we simply talk to one another. So I share that with you as both a fear and as a challenge, and very much as a hope for the future.
Thank you very much, and now over to you. The way we're going to do it is we're going to collect a few questions or comments, very short. Needs to be a question mark at the end. And then every panelist is going to be able to respond to anything else said on the panel or anything that comes from you. Just want to highlight a few things that came up. The issue of honesty in the conversation. Can the Jewish diaspora have a place or a space where they can honestly discuss what's going on in Israel without being delegitimized? There are issues of already framed here as concerns. Condition on relationship, yes or no. There is also a distinction that was not highlighted in this conversation here between the government of Israel and the state of Israel and the people in Israel. It's obviously not the same thing, and so on. So just a few thoughts, and please just stand up. Do we have a mic? Shai. Okay, we have a mic, but even if you don't, for the purpose of efficiency, stand up and fire away, please.
So, my name is Michal. I was a shlicha for 4 years, came back to Israel last year. My kind of common question is, Rabbi Daniel Hartman once said that in order for the younger generation to feel connected to Israel, I mean the younger generation here in North America and in the diaspora, they need to feel that they are equal shareholders in something. Maybe in issues of security, no, but right now the relationship are spiritual, philanthropist, and the young adults here in America feel like we are saying, we, the Israelis, thank you for your money, but you don't have an opinion about many things that maybe you feel uncomfortable in Israel, and you mentioned them. The question is, again, do you think there should be a structural organization that we create an organized way of the people in the diaspora and the Jews in the diaspora and the Jews in Israel, that they are creating something together, that everyone have equal shares in the creation of something that is meaningful. Israel is here, Israel exists, we have a strong army. What is the next goal of us together?
Okay, so I just asked that the next questions, if it's okay, just a little bit shorter, because it's going to take away from everybody and the panelists, and when I do this, time's up. Go.
Hi, Wayne. Interesting between...
Wayne Firestone, former president of Hillel International and a great guy.
Rachel and Russell started the discussion between a more optimistic and perhaps more pessimistic understanding of where our narrative is today, and I was wondering if, Len, you might have some data on the one significant narrative change between 48 and 67 and now is that Israel to the diaspora is not just the Israeli government or the Israeli story, but it's the Israeli people, people to people, and I know you have data on this from Birthright. We also have shlichim that have entered communities and have relationships with young people. What's the data telling us about what Israelis are like to young people in particular?
Thank you, Wayne. Over here, we have two questions. Just stand up and speak up.
Thank you. Amir Neiman. I've lived here in the U.S. for 16 years now. I have 2 kids. Deeply interested in struggling on a daily basis with education, identity of Israeli Americans here. Back to something that you said, Rachel, about coolness. So it seems to me, from my perspective, that not all Israelis admit the fact that they need their survival depends on American Jews and Jews in the diaspora. The same, I think, applies to some American Jews. Not all of them, I think, are on that same page of saying we need Israel as a nation state for our spiritual survival. How do we, and I think Israeli Americans, serve a very unique purpose because, I, for one, truly believe that that is vital, that connection is vital. How do you think that we can be used more to help American Jews connect better to Israel on a regular basis and not just, birthright and taglit and those type of things?
Fantastic. We have 3 more.
Hi, thank you.
Just very short, okay?
I'll do my best.
Please.
My name is Naama. I'm a shlicha here in the JHCC of Northern Virginia. From my experience as an Israeli Jew, the concept of Israel and Judaism is the same coin from the 2 sides. But from my connection here in the past year, conversation with Jews, especially young Jews, myself and younger, you realize that Israel is just one part of their Jewish identity. Some like kashrut, so you can keep kashrut and not keep kashrut and you're still fully Jewish, and the same thing with Israel. Israel can be part of your identity or can be detached because you disagree, you have issues with it, so you just detach it from your Jewish identity, it's fine. So the question is for actually everyone, is first of all, that I've been asked a lot, why should Americans care about Israel? That's a basic assumption most of us think we know, but not a lot of people do. And the second question is more about your connection. Should it be more connection to Israel as the Jewish nation, because I'm a Jew and should be connected to Israel, or look at it as another nation that has a startup nation, amazing country, whatever. Talk about the other aspects besides being a Jewish country.
Thank you, Naama. One more question, and then hopefully we'll have another round before we close. So please, maybe the lady here in the middle.
I'm Israeli, my husband is Israeli, we speak Hebrew. I have kids here, they speak Hebrew, one moved to Israel, the rest are not very much connected. And I have grandkids, they are in college, and they are bombarded by the left wing against Israel. What are you doing in colleges to help those kids? Because they're very hard time.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So I think our panelists here have a lot to chew on. Please choose what you want to focus on. Please limit your comments to 2 minutes because I'd love to get there and then give you closing remarks and finish on time. Let me just say that just to throw in another thing for all of you to think about. In the late 1980s, a famous book was published in Israel that echoed. It was called Blood for Money. That was the title, and that was the framing of the relationship between Israel and the diaspora. Is this still true today? What does it mean? And in this case, what does the money element in the equation, how is it evolving in the 21st century? So we're going to start with Russell and then work our way to Janice, please.
Just so I understand, we're addressing whichever.
Whatever you want. And I assume across all of us we'll cover most of it, and if we don't, we come back later. But
Just would you identify which part of the question?
let's just flow, and I think people will be able to figure it out. And if anybody feels that their question wasn't answered, we'll get back. Russell, go.
So I'll start with the last question, which was what is happening on college campuses. What I believe is happening on college campuses is wrong on a lot of the levels that we're doing. You have to be relevant to kids on college campus, and relevant is not the two-state solution. Relevant is not even BDS. Relevant is an African farmer who's bringing food onto their plate because of water technology created in a place called Israel. And if we talk about relevant issues on college campuses, we are going to have a conversation, not a problematic conversation, a conversation about it. I don't believe that it's such a high level. I think we have a family, and we have to look at our family. And at the end of the day, we have family problems. And we have to have family conversations. And they're difficult conversations. And I can have a brother that's very troubled. And I got to have that conversation. But that doesn't mean that we have a bad relationship or that the family unit is completely breaking apart. I think that the other issue, if I'm going to just hit on it, about the where are we? You know, if you take Look magazine in 1960 wrote an entire article called The Vanishing Jew. And they predicted by the year 2000 there would be less than 2 million Jews in America today. The one thing I can tell you is the vanishing Look magazine. It's gone. We're not. Now, the issue is, it goes with what Leonard says, if I could just add on that, is that look at statistics. And Steve, I'm going to even talk about those statistics. If you take all of those numbers, somewhat, kind of, little bit, that's pretty high. If I'm selling Coca-Cola, I would take that and run to the bank and say that 82% of the people had some engagement with me. I'm going to sell a lot of Coca-Cola. So it's not what we're going to sell, it's what we're going to help them buy. And what we're not doing is helping young people buy Israel. We're helping sell them the Israel that we as national organizations want to sell. And to help them buy Israel is to meet young people in Israel, like on Birthright, like with Israelis, like get out of Tel Aviv and get into the Negev and Galil. Talk to when I say the second tier, I'm not talking about, don't go on the political side. Don't go on the high professor side. Let's get young people talking to young people, and you guess what? Right, left, it doesn't make a difference. The conversation's the same. Their own survival, and their own survival is wrapped up into their Jewish survival, and Jewish survival is wrapped up into the land and people of Israel.
Thank you, Russell. Rachel, do you want to go next?
Yes, I'll address this gentleman in the front row. I'm sorry, I forgot your name. I really sort of have a two-part response to that. What I've been experiencing a lot is that Israelis who come here are very sensitive to anti-Semitism. I think they see it in places where American Jews do not. Very fearful that if they identify as Israeli, something bad's going to happen, or there's going to be negative repercussions, or they're not going to get tenure. And I think that every Israeli who's in the United States truly is an ambassador for Israel. I think it's important that people feel confident to sort of make sure they get that out there. And I grew up in a time when Jews maybe felt a little bit more insecure. I grew up on the West Coast, not New York. And we had drilled into us everything you did and said, people were going to say, the Jews do this, the Jews do that. If your house was messy, they were going to say Jews were messy. If you didn't stand up for an old lady on the bus, they were going to say Jews don't know how to stand up for old ladies on the bus. How anyone would know I was Jewish, I have no idea. But I think that Israelis have completely failed to internalize that message. And so they're not saying they're Israeli, even though most of the time people kind of figure it out. And they're wasting an opportunity to really be a fantastic example for Americans. And every single Israeli living in the United States must have 20 interactions every day with regular people. And every one of those is an opportunity. And I think one of the things the IAC is doing, if I can plug it for a second, is I think by giving the Israelis a feeling of being in a community, I do think that your identity gets stronger, and as Israelis, we're more likely to sort of assert that identity.
Great, thank you.
So let me try to answer two of the questions. First, Wayne's question about narrative and data. Birthright Israel, about which I know the most in terms of data, is Am Yisrael. It is about Am Yisrael. It is not about Eretz Yisrael. The context is Eretz Yisrael, but it is the relationships that develop. And one of the most extraordinary findings of our research is about the Mifgash. It was talked about at the earlier session, the Mifgashim, that the impact of having Chayalim and young adults, Israelis, on the buses with diaspora youth is that the Israelis are impacted at exactly the same level as the diasporans, that the Israelim who take part come away feeling that they are part of something bigger. They're not just Israelis, they are part of something bigger. And that is such an incredible insight. They couldn't give, I would use an expletive, they couldn't care less about the larger political and organizational issues. It is about the relationships that develop amongst people. Let me say about college campuses, we're about to release a study that's going to show that across campuses around, again, the United States, Artzot Habrit, that there are wildly different levels of hostility to Israel and to Jews, widely different levels of anti-Semitism. And what's interesting, two interesting things about it. One is that the levels are wildly different, even though every campus has incidents. Not every incident turns out to be something that produces hostility and anti-Semitism. But secondly, it doesn't affect connection to Israel. That even on the campuses with the highest levels of hostility, the highest number of incidents, anti-Semitic and anti-Israel incidents, In some cases, these incidents actually produce what we call in-group solidarity. They actually force young adult Jews to learn about, to become part of groups, to deal with this. And the problem, the underlying problem, and I'll leave you with this, is that the issue is chinuch. The issue is educating people, that young Jews on campuses, Israelim as well as American Jewish youth, don't feel that they know enough, don't feel that they have the capacity to engage in the debates and the discussions. And that, rather than hasbara, is where our energies need to be focused.
Thank you.
I spoke earlier on a personal level. I'd like to speak now more institutionally, if you will. I left off with two words. I said that we have to be honest and we have to empower people. Let me talk a little bit more about what that means. We here at the Jewish Federation of Greater Washington are deeply concerned about the connections and what we see as a distancing in that connection. What we've also learned in our research is that it is critical that whatever we engage our community on, it has to be relevant to them. We changed our brand to make it yours. We're asking people to make the community their own, and their entrance into the portals of community have to speak to them. The same thing is for Israel. So we are empowering our young people. I'm going to try to answer as many of the questions that were raised as possible. We are empowering our young people before they go to college. It's too late when they get to college. We are empowering them before with a robust teen ambassador program, teaching them how to advocate for Israel, and it is not propaganda. It is the most honest conversation happening in our community among teens who care about Israel but want to know more. We are empowering our young adults who come back from Birthright with a robust engagement follow-up program, because you're right, it's all about the follow-up. And we here in DC believe that we are doing a slightly better job than in many communities. We're investing heavily in it, and we bring back the soldiers with whom they've spent 10 days on those trips. We're bringing them here on a reverse mifgash program, because what it does is it exposes those Israelis to what's happening here in the States. We are empowering our synagogue by expanding. Naama is here, the JCC Shlicha. Our senior Shlicha is here, Penina. And what we're doing is we have the largest mishlachat, the largest delegation of synagogue Shlichim in North America. We just brought 9 people over a couple of weeks ago, and they'll be spending 2 years in synagogue touching, personally, we estimate between 15 and 20,000 members of those synagogues that they're a part of, deepening connection in relevant ways. And finally, we changed the whole platform of our partnership with Israel. We were part of something called Partnership Together, Partnership 2000, whatever. Been a great success for many. We here in DC felt that it was too limiting, that the world is flat and Israel is flat. And to limit our connection to one geographic space in Israel didn't seem to make sense. We have a new platform, and it's all about relevance. It's all about finding ways of connecting people in areas that they care about here regarding social change. So the first question is about what? It's about things that you share your experiences with Israelis and Americans.
Thank you very much. Janice? Janice, one last round of questions, closing remarks. Janice, please.
Yes, I'm going to provide 4 very simplistic responses to the issue of the relationship between Israelis and American Jews. First of all, I think it is critical that we do some very practical partnerships around the value of tikkun olam. So a wonderful Israeli woman, Sivan Yaari, started a program called Jewish Hearts for Africa, in which both Americans and Israelis built solar systems, built water systems, built food processes for families in all of Africa, thereby bringing together the Israeli community and the American Jewish community around a common value. I think it's also critical in terms of relationships that when Jewish young people go to Israel, they not only have the experience of learning and understanding, but also community service. And I think it's important for Israel to open up those experiences for them so that the hands-on feeling of what it is to be part of the land becomes part of their heart and part of their soul. I'm going to say something now that's going to be a little bit controversial. I have spent over 40 years as a volunteer in the Jewish community. And what I have found, and please forgive me, is that in many respects, the American Israeli community is ghettoized from the mainstream Jewish community. And that creates, or up until now has created some challenges. What I think is critical is that not only dialogues occur, but also, and very simplistically, that some of the role models from Israel come to America, are introduced by Israelis, and are shown to the younger people. Film producers, people who are in fashion, people who are in medicine, not just the IDF, but regular people, people to whom the average person can identify with, who can use as a role model, who can understand Israel in its most basic common relational terms. And I think that that too is a very important part. I'll close also by saying that I think that we need to fight common causes that exist worldwide. I don't think that this is necessarily the best of all times for our Jews. I think if you go to the UN, I think if you go to even the State Department here in the United States, I think if you go to France or wherever, you are seeing rising anti-Semitism. And to the degree that the Israeli community, who is so sophisticated in PR and media and advertising, can help in the process with the Americans to turn that perception around. This is a partnership that is critical for the future of us as our people and for the future of Kol Yisrael.
Okay, so we have 5 more minutes, and if anybody else wants to really fire away, one sentence, question or comment, that's the opportunity. Meanwhile, the panelists will focus their thoughts. We'll go from Janice to Russell to close. Please, over there. Go ahead. Okay, one more comment over there.
Hi, I'm actually a multi-generational family. I have here my kid and my mom, which is very exciting. And I wanted to ask about, I think one of the best connections that kids have are with their grandparents, and those are one of the most established and meaningful connections that you can have. You know, I'm a first-generation Holocaust survivor, and that was very powerful for me. And I would like to know, especially about Hadassah and all the other organizations, how to connect between the Israeli-American kids here in America and the grandparents in Israel, and also how can we actually bring the Israeli-American grandparent generation, the baby boomers, into the Israeli-American community and help connect between the generations with obviously Jewishness and Arabishness.
Great. So I have to apologize. We have 3 minutes for 5 panelists. So Shai is going to chop my head off if I'm late. So I apologize to everybody else. Please forgive us. Closing remarks. 1 minute each, please, if possible. Janice, do you want to start?
I am the child of Holocaust survivors. I believe that we have to look to the future and to our strengths. I think the time has come where we can't use only the Holocaust as a raison d'etre. I think we have to look to those aspects of the Israeli community that have an incentive and a reason for the next generation. There is so much that young people can learn from Israel. there's so much that young Americans can experience in Israel that they can bring home and apply to their communities. I think that the sense of history has to not only be how we suffered, but the sense of history has to be about how we conquered, how we contribute, how we are heroic, how we are courageous, and I think that that is an important message that we have to share with the next generation so that they too can feel that they want to be part of something that is going to contribute to the world in many different ways.
Thank you.
Some people see the glass as half empty, some see it as half full. Woody Allen commented that he sees the glass as twice as big as it needs to be. The challenge for all of us is that on any particular day, the glass is either half empty or half full. And for those of us in leadership roles, the goal is to continue to move toward an aspirational relationship in this context, an aspirational relationship between the diaspora and Israel. Apropos this particular conference and the extraordinary numbers that are here, considering where it was several years ago, the IAC and the Israeli Americans that it represents is a new tool in this drive to that aspiration. If the numbers are correct, somewhere between 500 and 800,000 Israelis now live in America. That's anywhere between 7 and 11% of our total Jewish population here in America. That's extraordinary. We in Washington are looking to a powerful and robust and exciting relationship with the new IAC chapter. They live in our building, in fact. And we believe that there are many, many points of cooperation and collaboration to bring the Israelis living in our community closer to our community and for us to learn from one another. Thanks.
Thank you.
So it seems to me that we have to stop looking in the rearview mirror. This world is a very different world than many of us grew up in. And in fact, we may be at the post-organizational, post-program era that increasingly, the millennial generation here is a great example of it. People don't want to be part of the traditional institutions and organizations, whether it be federation, whether it be B'tai Knesset, synagogues, whether it be other large organizations. The action is in small groups. The action is in relations among people. I couldn't help but notice last night, because I walked out once or twice during the speeches, how exciting the conversations were outside, and then the contrast to what was going on inside. That, I think, is the paradigm for the future, and I leave that for all of us to think about.
Thank you.
So if I could just make a little bit of a pitch. The IAC is a young organization. I think one of the things that is very much part of our DNA is a certain amount of humility and a willingness to do new things. We're very open to suggestions. My email is rachel.naomi.davidson@gmail.com. If you have an idea of something we can do, for God's sakes, write to me and we'll try to make it happen. I think that we got to crowdsource this, and I do not have the answers.
So thank you, and thank you for the panel. I'll talk quickly for my 1 minute. I think it's leadership. Leadership. I think what Steve talked about, what is the leadership? We cannot, exactly what Leonard said, cannot look in our rearview mirror. We have a different kind of community than we had before. In 1940, you announced last night, when Adam announced last night that the state of California did an anti-BDS, in 1940, we couldn't get 14 senators and congressmen to talk about us. This is an unbelievable new world. When you talk about high school, you have to do something in high school. One of the reasons that the Jewish National Fund acquired the Alexander Muss High School is it's not to take 1,500 kids to Israel from high school on a semester abroad experience. It's to take 5,000 a year. You take them for 12 and 16 weeks, and we sell it as an academic adventure. That's for the parents. But for the Jewish community, we return them as a return on investment of a Jewish community leader for the next 70, 80 years. And that's why we have to constantly invest in new pieces, and new ideas, and new thoughts, and entrepreneurial spirits. And the last thing on the mayors. You're exactly right, but it's not the mayors, and I will deny saying it to all of them, the mayors of Jerusalem and Haifa and Tel Aviv. It is the mayors of the Eshkol region. It is the mayors of the Arava. It is the mayor in Sderot and the mayor in Akko. It's the mayor in Kiryat Shmona. You want to get to know the Israeli people? The Israeli people? Go out there and go meet those mayors, one who's here. And you're right, then you're talking to the average Israeli, with the average American, and we build a Jewish community, and we have an unbelievable future.
If I may just say one last sentence before we close. This whole session was about the evolving understanding of what does it mean to be the nation state of the Jewish people. I slightly differ from Janice. I do think that this is the best time ever for our people. We do have big challenges. But I think that the fact that we have these platforms that we have today, which is the State of Israel in its outstanding performance, and diaspora Jewry, not just in America, all over the world, super performing Jewish communities in Australia, even in South Africa, in Europe, really, really strong communities, challenges notwithstanding. For the first time in history, we are actually in a position to move the needle on global issues quantitatively. We could really make a different and better world, improve the world through our capabilities, and not just through our values and the way we echo in the world through our ideals. And I think this is a great opportunity and a great direction for being and for effectuating this notion of Israel being the nation state of the Jewish people around big challenges that face our world today. I want to close with that. I want to thank these panelists.